So, as I said, welcome to our workshop. We would like to start off with the welcome speech from our Managing Director and Team Leader of the Business Support to the EU-India Policy Dialogues, Mr. Paul Jensen. Paul, please come on stage and yeah, thanks for your time here.
Well, thank you, Atul. I don't think speech is the right word because this, as you said, is a workshop, yeah. And I think you've also designed it so there's interaction, there's a bit of ping pong, there's a bit of brainstorming, so as to decide on the way forward. And I'm pleased to see so many of you here. I mean, to the benefit of those who've not been part of this earlier, the EU-India Aviation Cluster is meant for exactly such working groups, taking up topics that will ensure collaboration, will identify challenges and barriers and what needs to be done at regulation level, maybe even at policy level, and then bring that to the right fora. What the cluster is also all about is identifying opportunities in business. So European companies and Indian companies and counterparts can work together on technologies, on solutions, on products, on projects and so forth. So I think that's also one of the main topics today. I mean, you yourselves as cluster members have identified runway safety as a big topic. We already had, a first workshop engagement in November, if I'm correct, Atul. And yes. This is now the second. It is now the second workshop on safety, and we're combining it with a further workshop tomorrow on performance-based navigation. The two things apparently cannot be torn apart. They are interlinked and they interface a lot with each other. So I think that's a good setup, Atul, that you put up here. Have a lot of discussion, and then we can move forward quickly with the next set of activities that will indeed bring EU and India stakeholders together and working more closely on some of these topics, because both topics, I mean, for both regions, for both the EU as well as for India, this is a super important topic. It's very dynamic, a lot of things happening in that space. So I think it's also a very contemporary and timely, it's a contemporary topic and a timely time to be talking about this. So thank you all for being here, all the stakeholders from throughout the value chain. Good to see you also, Carlos, here as well. I know, of course, you're a major stakeholder in the whole safety scenario. So very good to have you on board. And without further ado, Atul, I'll leave it to you to get on to the working shop mode.
Yes, but before I start, I would just like to introduce myself to everybody who doesn't know anything about the EU-India Aviation Cluster and about myself. My name is Atul Suri. I'm leading the EU-India Aviation Cluster since July last year. And this cluster is a support on the ongoing EU-India policy dialogue on aviation by strengthening and facilitating EU-India businesses cooperation and technical exchanges on civil aviation. And the cluster is very demand-driven. So demand-driven means that we are addressing industry-specific demand in order to create bilateral strategic frameworks. And we are working in the fields of sustainability, infrastructure and operations, and smart technology. And safety is a responsibility to comply with international standards, and it goes throughout the whole value chain. And as Paul already mentioned, we are continuing with our workshop series on safety that we started in November 2020, where we got very, very good feedback. And we are narrowing down now the topics to relevant topics today on GRF, the global reporting format, and tomorrow on PBN, the performance-based navigation. And as Paul already said, this is very timely because ICAO has set a date, the 4th of November 2021, as a deadline for implementation of the new runway condition reporting tools worldwide, including India. So in all, this forum will showcase European best practices from our cluster members and technologies, and will also give you, the participants, the opportunity to actively get in touch with us, with the cluster members, so that we as a cluster can take things forward to turn them ideally into opportunities to foster bilateral business relationships. So I'm just resharing my presentation here. We will start off with some insights on the regulations on GRF from EASA. And then we'll continue to the more technical side with findings of NACO's GRF ground reporting tool, condition reporting tool, presented by Juri Allman of NACO Netherlands Airports Consultants, continued by insights of onboard technology from Mr. Charles Thornberry from NAVBLUE. And then we'll have an interactive discussion where you can place your questions before or during the session in the chat box. I'm hoping that we'll have a very interactive discussions with a lot of questions, with a lot of answers, and a lot of insights. And I don't want to take too much time now. Vasilios, please share your screen and yeah, start with your part on the regulatory aspects, please.
Hi,
Vasilios?
yes. Good
Okay.
afternoon to everyone. So my name is Vasilios Stefanioros, working for well, the last 10 years at EASA. I'm a senior expert at Aerodromes, and before joining the agency, I have spent almost 15 years in aerodrome operations, mainly in Greece. So can you see my screen now?
It's coming up. Yes, we can.
Yep.
So the screen now? Yeah, okay, so I think, yes, you can see the screen. So I'm gonna give you a brief information how we develop the regulations in regards to the GRF for the EU region. And I'm gonna touch upon all domains that have been, well, it was required to introduce the changes. So I will explain to you the regulatory process a little bit, how we are doing things. Then I will speak about the changes in the aerodrome regulation, in the ATM, ANS, and the AIS. And last on the air operations and how we deal with performance data. And I will conclude my presentation with implementation and how we monitor the progress. So the runway excursions, it's also a problem in Europe. And the graphs you see are coming from our annual safety report. And there you see that runway excursions are one of the top categories. It's not only in EU, it's worldwide. And among the contributing factors, one of them was the runway surface condition, and mainly the way it is assessed and reported. And on the right-hand graph, on the left, on the lower corner, you will see the number of runway excursions we had in the European region until 2017, where the runway surface condition was a contributing factor. And the outcome of these accidents or incidents, we received a lot of recommendations. And as a safety agency, we have to act But in the meantime, we had also initiatives from FAA. Many of you might be aware of TALPA ARC. It's the takeoff and landing distance assessment aviation rulemaking committee, where they started implementing the GRF. That was the first step of the GRF. Then this has been taken over by ICAO, and more specifically by the Friction Task Force, where they have developed all the material for the implementation of the GRF. And we, as EASA, we took all this material in order to adapt our regulations. And this happened between 2018 and 2020. So, because this is a multidisciplinary approach, as I said, it touches upon different domains. We worked in different streams, but coordinating with each other. So we had one stream about air operations and the initial airworthiness, where we discussed issues about aeroplane performance requirements. Then we had the aerodromes, where we had a specific task about runway surface condition assessment and reporting. And last but not least, we had another task for the ATM, ANS, and AAS, as well as the rules of the air. So we tried, well, what were the main principles? And I have to say, because it's something that has to be applied worldwide, the objective is to achieve harmonization. So our basis was the ICAO provisions. Well, in our legal terms, we had to keep a balance between implementing rules, acceptable limits of compliance, and guidance material. But in doing so, we had to review and analyze every ICAO provision. You may know that GRF includes changes to Annex 3, Annex 6, Annex 8, Annex 11, Annex 14, Annex 15, PANS AAM, PANS Aerodromes. So we had to go through all these provisions, and in order to keep the system stable, we kept all the basic principles at rule level. So we don't want to have deviations. Now, the procedural issues, because you can have different working methods, we kept it at AMC. And because this is something very, very new to everybody, we have provided extensive guidance material in order to explain the GRF. That were the main principles. And the outcome of all this regulatory process was the publication of different opinions, which led to regulations. And you will see the different regulations for the various domains, which you will find very easily if you go to our website. Now, there are some things that we don't do in Europe. We do not allow the publication of friction measurements. Even if ICAO allows this, in EU, when you are flying in EU, you will never receive friction measurements. And the reason behind is because friction measurements are not correlated with aeroplane performance data. So even if you give a number to the pilot, most probably it cannot be used. And the other reason is that all these devices which are available, there are no performance standards for this type of devices when we are talking about contaminated runways. But we do not ban, we do not prohibit the use. We allow the use in a comparative way. So it's one of the tools that the airport can use to assess if the runway surface conditions are going better or worse. So it can be used in a comparative way, but this has to be supported by other observations. Then there are, in the SNOTAM, we have included two additional terms. For the first one, the specially prepared winter runway, it's something that it's very, very specific for the northern part of Europe, which I don't think that you will find. I don't think that it's applicable to your country. But the second one, the slippery wet, is something that we have added. And this is required when the runway by NOTAM is slippery when wet. So we oblige the aerodrome operators, whenever the runway is not very well maintained and they have low friction measurements during maintenance, then they have to report a runway condition code 3 instead of 5. And we changed also the SNOTAM format for two reasons. First, we had to include these two terms that I mentioned, and we had to simplify the situational awareness section. And imagine that, well, you have a very big airport where you have a lot of taxiways, and the way it is proposed by ICAO, where they report for each taxiway the condition when you have snow or other contaminants, well, it's gonna be a very, very long NOTAM. So we are proposing to group taxiways and aprons. On the METR, the change that we have is that we remove from the METR the runway surface conditions, because now this will be done through the runway condition report, or what we call SNOTAM, and I'm using this with caution because now the SNOTAM in Annex 15 and the Annex and the PANS-EAM is not the most appropriate term, but ICAO has not changed it yet, but it will be changed because now this method of reporting will be used not only when you have snow, but you can use it also when you have water on the runway. Then the other thing is that it's the obligation of the pilot to report back when braking action encountered is not good as reported. So the pilot now is in the loop. And when they receive a runway condition report from the airport through air traffic services, and it's not good, they have to report it back to the aerodrome, because this triggers some actions. And of course, air traffic services, they have the requirement to transfer this information. And this is, in Europe, is part of the regulation, because it's an important element of the whole process. And last but not least, we had to change the ATC phraseologies, because also in PANS ATM, the phraseology has been changed to adjust the needs of the GRF. On the air operations, well, for this, I'm not a pilot, but this is what I learned from by discussing with them and by working with them, is that now we have the requirement for the assessment of landing distance at the time of arrival. And they have introduced this factor, the 1.15 of the landing distance at the estimated time of landing. But in order to do this, they have to consider the performance information. And this, I know that some manufacturers, for example, depending on the different runway condition codes, they have provided performance data for the different aircraft types. So this one, this information that is given by the manufacturers supports the pilot on setting the on preparing the aircraft for landing, and also do the correct assessment. The other thing is that for the pilots, as I said before, everybody is on the same boat. So also the pilots, by law, they are obliged to report to the air traffic services when the braking action encountered there is not good as reported. So, and the last is that the performance is information. So this can be done by the approved data. So for example, we have the CS25, supplementary data when the manufacturer does not provide this data, then they can use, we have a list of other ways to do it. And as a last resort, we have introduced also some generic factors when nothing is available. Well, they are very, very conservative, I was told, but there is always a method to consider the runway condition and connect this with aeroplane performance. On the implementation, well, ICAO says the last day, the implementation date is November 2021. It's 4th of November. But in Europe, we are going a little bit earlier. So it's going to be 12th of August 2021. And this, well, in United States, the GRF applies well since October 2016. In EU and in Canada, it will apply as of 12th of August 2021. And the reason we did this was that we don't want to change the system in the winter period because the transition where for some states it's going to be very, very difficult to go from one system from the old system to the new one in the middle of the winter period. So we said the summer is a period where situation is very easy in terms of weather. And in the same time, we are working on different safety promotion activities. Well, 1 month ago, we had 2 big webinars organized by the agency. We give focus on training and we are also supporting the development of standards for automated systems that they can assess the runway surface conditions in an automated way to avoid interruption of runway operations for inspections. Then there are different challenges. So for the aerodromes in Europe, we have well different level of experience with contaminated runways. It's not the same story when we are talking from the southern part of Europe compared with the central or the northern part of Europe. It's a management of change. They have to do a lot of things, and especially how we deal with busy runways. That's why we are trying to introduce automated systems. For performance data, well, the challenge is to have the data available by manufacturers for all aircraft types. Well, the major manufacturers, the big manufacturers, they have the data, but it's not happening for everybody. And the same goes for the air operators. It's a management of change. They need to change procedures, manuals, and training. And we as an agency, we are going to monitor the whole process. First of all, through inspection reports. So we are visiting states and we will see how they implement the regulations. Another thing is that we have the occurrence reporting, then we will try to monitor the number of accidents and serious incidents related to surface conditions. And of course, we we'll try, well, we will live 1 year, and then we will talk with operators, aerodrome operators and air operators, with surveys and interviews to see what they think about the new process, if there is a need for improvements. So I think that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions at the end of the workshop, and you can always contact me if you need further information. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasilios, for these regulatory insights from Europe. Now we are moving on to the technologies and processes that comply with these regulations. We have Yuri Allman from NACO here. NACO, Yuri, please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Atul. Thank you very much. I'm Yuri Allman. I'm an airport planner and region manager for South Asia for NACO, Netherlands Airport Consultants. And during this workshop, I'd like to just share some of our insights that we've gathered through the implementation of an automated runway condition reporting tool. Like my honorable cluster colleague from EASA mentioned, this is one of those initiatives of developing a automated tool to help airports with their runway condition reporting.
Yeah, Yuri, we don't see the presentation. It flipped to your folder.
Okay.
We just see your folder. It's not the presentation. It's just the folder where the presentation is in.
I think it's still Vasilios' one.
Okay, Vasilios, can you please yeah.
Now.
And now, Yuri, you can share your screen, please. Yuri?
Yep.
There you go. Now we can see it. Very good.
Okay. Okay. This gives an impression of the tool. It is an automated way to actually assess the runway condition, and it's different levels of automation. You can have an advanced tool, basic tool, or and it can even be on an app. But yeah, I'll first just briefly touch on, of course, the background of the global reporting format. But I'll quickly skip through this because my colleague from EASA already briefed you on this quite well. But yeah, do want to emphasize that some 90% of runway excursions happen on runways that are not dry. So it's really an important issue that ICAO has tried to tackle with this new global reporting format for runway conditions. What is most important for the reporting is to assess whether the condition of the runway has changed, how many millimeters of contaminant is on the runway, then what resulting runway condition code is there, and what percentage of the runway is covered by this contaminant. So runway essentially is divided into 3 sections. And then it's you have to indicate in the report which section of the runway has which runway condition. And of course, this report has to be made then available to the ANSP for the dissemination to the air crews. How has that been done in the past? The runway condition reporting, you would send somebody onto the runway, you would close it down temporarily, to check the level of water on the runway, or snow in case of northern countries. And it's all a manual process. This means that you have to temporarily shut down the runway, which is of course a big impact on your operations, especially for single runway airports. And then you could manually fill in the assessment sheet and share it with the concerned parties. Runway condition report looks essentially like this. It has different codes, which are universally then accepted and readable. Like I said, on the right, you can see what description there is for every 1/3 of the runway. So who is involved? It's the airport's responsibility actually to assess the runway condition and report it using the RCR. Of course, it's the AAS responsibility to convey this information from the runway condition report to the aircraft operators, and then it's ultimately the pilots who use this information to determine if landing or takeoff is safe. Therefore, it's very important that the airport is able to do this assessment accurately and timely. So how does our tool work? It uses the 3D model of the runway. So you have to do a proper assessment of the runway itself. And it combines this with real-time rainfall data. For this, the rain gauges are installed near each third of the runway. And then, we calibrate it. So we check under which level of rainfall do we get which runway condition. So after that is calibrated, then the tool can actually predict the runway condition based on the amount of water that has been registered in the gauge. This way, so it's very straightforward. This way you can actually do accurate runway condition reporting, and it even has a forecasting element in it, right? So as soon as you have for your airport gathered enough data, and you can even make predictions that based on certain weather conditions, you can already predict how much water would be on which part of the runway. So it's a self-learning tool that becomes more and more accurate and can be used more and more in a predictive way without sending somebody onto the runway to actually manually check the conditions. So why do airports choose this tool over a manual runway condition report? Well, it's accuracy. You eliminate the human factor, so therefore you have a more accurate and consistent reporting of water film depth and coverage. It's cost efficient because particularly you just do not need to close your runway just to do the inspection. And that in itself for many airports will make great cost savings because of less impact on your operations. And finally, compliance. So it creates confidence that your airport can meet the 4th November 2021 deadline set by ICAO. So this is an example, for instance, of one of the airports where it's been implemented. This is in the Caribbean, on Bonaire Airport. It's a single runway airport. So they saw the significance of implementing this tool so that they could be well prepared for the November deadline set by ICAO. And it's been calibrated, and it's running successfully right now at this airport. So again, this is just an overview of the output you would get from the tool, and it's very easy to then share that with through the ATC to the pilots, and it builds a database, like I said. So you store and you can see developments in your runway condition. You can do predictive modeling of what weather conditions would result in certain runway conditions, and therefore, it could really help you as an airport be future ready for this new requirement. that's it from us. If you would like any more information, I'm very happy to share, and I look forward in this workshop to also answer questions that you may have.
दीदी का फोन आ रहा है, फटाफट कर लो अपनी.
Sir, can you please mute yourself? Okay. Yeah, Jori, thank you very much for these insights. I have noted down that one question from my side before we move on. You told me that your runway conditioning tool has been accredited by the Netherlands government. You was telling me one time, so I would just like to know what this is about, please.
Yes, we were actually the Dutch government and the Ministry of Transport recognized the importance of this tool, and was actually able to facilitate the introduction of this tool at this Bonaire airport, which is part of the Dutch West Indies, and was therefore instrumental in this pilot use of the tool. And why this airport? It's a single runway airport. Very important that the proper safe operations could be guaranteed for the future, and also high cost of labor on the island with less specialism for this task, and therefore the automation of this process was realized to be very apt for this particular client.
Okay, very good. Thanks a lot. Sulvita Saxena, she raised her hand. Mrs. Saxena, please.
Good afternoon. I just have one question. What he said is automatic. This is an auto tool for runway condition reporting. Basically, for each airport, do we have a setup to put in the slope criteria on the runway? Because the rate of precipitation and how much water will flow at what rate from the runway surface will depend upon the slope factor of that runway. So in this auto tool, do we have a provision of putting that for final calculation? That's what I wanted to ask.
Ms. Saxena, thank you. Very good question. Indeed, during the calibration process, we will actually help set up the tool in line with the particular runway 3D setup. So, and that's why we're not an IT company that is developing this tool. We're actually the airport planners and designers who are able to really put the geometric condition of that runway as a basis for the tool during the calibration process. So you're absolutely right. Every runway is different, and therefore the performance of the water flow on the runway would be unique for each airport. So that's very important to calibrate that at the beginning.
Thank you very much. And I think in this we does it also caters for, because in RCR we have more than 25% of so that also is taken care in this.
Sorry, your question just broke up. Could you repeat?
It is the see, when we report, it is when coverage for contamination is more than 20%. So that's how does it do? Because this unit you are installing outside near the edge of the runway or somewhere at certain distance, right? Does it measure that coverage percentage?
Right. So during the calibration process, we will be measuring the actual water film at even the center of the runway, so in the most critical parts of the runway. And during that calibration process, yes, so it will make sure that the most critical parts of that runway and the conditions are calibrated vis-a-vis the measurements of the water rainfall in the water gauge. So in future, when you do the predictive part of the runway reporting, it will actually be based not just on the side of the runway, but for the most critical parts of the runway. I hope that answers the question, because again it kind of broke up a bit, Ms. Saxena.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. In future, maybe we send from runway at various places to capture from a remote place, probably. Thank you very much for the answer. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Yuri. Thanks for the insight. I think we can discuss further in our interactive discussion. I would like to now move on to Charles Thornberry from NAVBLUE, who will give us insights on onboard technology on Runway Sense. Charles, please come to the stage, and it's all yours.
Okay, first question, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
And I've taken an unusual step of starting midway through, so just bear with me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Atul, for arranging this session. My name is Charles Thornberry. I'm head of airspace and airport sales here in NAVBLUE, and thank you very much for participating in this workshop today. Just a brief overview of what we're going to look at. I'll give you a short introduction to NAVBLUE for those of you who might not be familiar with us. And then we'll have a look at the Runway Sense tool that we've developed, and we'll have a look at some of the feedback we've been getting from our airport stakeholders, and then we'll have a little bit of a look at how we're deploying the system and a bit of a focus on India. So for those of you who don't know, NAVBLUE is a 100% Airbus company. We focus principally on flight operations and ATM services. So for airlines, that's things like flight planning, charts, data, electronic flight bag. And then in the airspace ATM domain, we're doing a consultancy, design of new airspaces, that's the trajectories that the aircraft are flying, as well as some optimization activities at the airports themselves. We are based in France. We have a major office in Canada near Toronto and just outside of London, and some other offices around the world that you can see there, even in India. And we're about 500 people and about 500 customers, so there's nice symmetry there. Our interest in runway safety isn't limited to Runway Sense. We've been interested in this domain for a long time. We have a few other solutions that we offer. So, for example, we have our runway overrun prevention system, ROPS, which is a capability that's on the aircraft to give crew alerting such that they can be advised of runway landing distances being shorter than they anticipated. We have EASA, which is a very high resolution 3D ILS simulation environment. So we can model an airport environment and the performance of the ILS on that airport. There are multiple applications in terms of optimizing runway operations, but for safety aspect, it can identify sources of interference with ILS. Not just existing sources, but if you're planning construction or you want to put a crane somewhere, you can anticipate potential interference, and that obviously has a safety impact. And then we've got some more consulting about risk assessment, identifying potential hazards, and putting in place an action plan to mitigate those hazards. Runway Sense has been in the works for quite a long time. Started about 10 years ago. Airbus recognized that there was a significant proportion of runway incidents or airport incidents were represented by runway excursions. In 2018, IATA have some statistics that show that they accounted for about 38% of incidents at airports, so a very significant proportion, and Airbus has an interest in making sure that this is reduced, obviously. So what is Runway Sense? It's quite a simple concept. In essence, we've basically transformed the aircraft into a sensor. we can upload some software onto the aircraft, and then as it lands and rolls out, it can determine the condition of the runway and then share that information with the different stakeholders. We get an immediate report into the MCDU that the pilot can see, and then they can include this information in their pilot report. But then the data is also sent via ACARs to the NAVBLUE servers, and then it can be distributed to the different stakeholders. So again, to the airline, they can see the information through our web UI, or to the airport, and that can be seen through the web UI. And we have an API as well, so it can be integrated into other systems as well. The airport then can use that information to support its runway management activities. As Yuri mentioned in his presentation, closing out the runway, especially when there's only one runway, to do friction measurements. It's not brilliant for your operational optimization. So this is data that's been generated without having to close the runway down. And this information can then be used by the runway team to determine their clearing strategy and what they might want to do. Then, of course, it can be fed, as Vasilios was mentioning, fed back to the air traffic controller, and then this can be used for inbound aircraft to help plan their landings. So there's really two major components. We've turned the aircraft into a sensor, so it's generating highly accurate, highly unique data about the runway condition, and then this data is being shared in a collaborative manner with all of the stakeholders that need to know. The actual calculation, how does it work? Well, basically when the aircraft is landing, it will calculate the landing against different runway conditions that are represented by the RCAM, the Runway Condition Assessment Matrix, dry through to poor, and then it will then benchmark the actual performance against those 6 calculations, and then it can use that as a reference to determine the actual braking performance of the runway itself. So again, transforming the aircraft into a sensor. On the right-hand side, as I mentioned before, this gets shown in the multi-function computation data unit, or I can't remember what MCDU means, but it gets immediately shown in the MCDU that the pilot can then see, and then at the bottom screen they can drill down and get a bit more information by runway third, and that has an accuracy of about 100 meters. At the moment, this software is available in the A320 family, the Airbus A320 family, 319, 2021, and it can be acquired retrofit, so you can upgrade, update existing aircraft, or indeed with aircraft that are being newly delivered, it can be part of the configuration. And the important thing is it's been designed with the GRF in mind to make sure that it's helping contribute to the GRF reporting requirements, as Vasilios was mentioning before. And as Vasilios mentioned as well, the GRF comes into effect in November this year, obviously having been delayed a year due to COVID. So this is actually quite a young service. I said it had been in the works for 10 years, that's the development side, but in fact to have a service that's been delivered to airports, it was launched in about October last year, and we've had a few trials, and we're starting to get some positive feedback from airports who are using it. So this is just a little bit of the feedback we've been getting. Finavia is the Finnish air navigation service provider, and they also operate the airports in Finland, and they've been well aware of this data for a long time, and they're hopefully looking forward to getting it available, certainly in time for the GRF and an upcoming winter. Similarly, we did a trial with Skavsta Airport. This is the second Stockholm airport, and again, they provide a very positive response, and it's getting them a unique data of what the pilot is actually seeing. And then we can, as I mentioned, we have an API. We can integrate with third-party platforms. We're doing so with a Swedish company, Sasis ASFT, so that they can deliver this integrated into their service. And I think that's where it could be really powerful for airports. Standalone, it's good information, it's unique information, but it really can be leveraged when it's combined with other data sets. We've had positive feedback from the airlines. Again, one European airline has been using it for quite a long time, and they report it's simple to use. And I think we did a pilot survey, not just for that airline, but for other airlines as part of the controlled entry into service. And it was almost 90% of the pilots agreed that the data being provided by Runway Sense was very representative of what they were experiencing when they were landing. And then, just as an aside, the data is starting to be recognised as unique and accurate, and it's been included as a potential option as part of the Global Action Plan for the prevention of runway excursions, and as a potential data source in their guidance documentation, and it's been validated by some of the international organisations you see there. And furthermore, we've been participating in other activities. So we've got Transport Canada is preparing an advisory circular for braking measurements, and Runway Sense and NAVBLUE have been participating in that activity. So as I mentioned, we're in a phase right now where we're trying to get this software on the aircraft as much as possible. It's probably no surprise to see that we've got most of our equipages in Europe. We have got a lot of airlines equipped there or equipping there. In total, around the world, almost 1,400 are committed to equip, and we're in ongoing discussions with multiple other airlines because we recognise that the value is in the data, and of course, to get the data, you need more aircraft equipped. So we're in a campaign right now to equip as many aircraft as possible. So very good penetration in Europe, obviously, and as you can see, we've got some interest from the Scandinavian countries. Of course, they've got snowy conditions they have to face, but it's not just in the snowy countries. You're starting to see it elsewhere in Europe because, of course, GRF is for everywhere. It's not just for the snowy airports. We've recently signed Aeroflot in Russia. That's over 110, 115 aircraft. And of course, we will anticipate snowy conditions in Russia. And in North America, we've got ongoing discussions. We've signed Air Canada, JetBlue, Transat, so it's going well there. Specifically in India, we're probably that's probably the country with the best level of equipage and the most concentrated amount of data we're now seeing. It's still early days. As you can see, we've got 3 major operators there, some of whom are on this call, so thank you very much for attending. And as you can see, a lot of aircraft. There are other Airbus operators in India, and we're in discussions with them as well. So we can anticipate with the A320 fleet in India, we will start to get a significant amount of data. In the last couple of months alone, you can see there are about 45 airports there, all of which we've had data generated for just in the last couple of months. And we're going to see that start increasing over time as the equipage rates start to increase. The number of numbers you're seeing there for the aircraft, that's the number of aircraft which can be equipped, but each of those operators are still in the process of equipping. So I'm expecting to see the numbers really start to increase. And this is just an example of our 6 highest performing airports in terms of the number of messages they're generating. So again, we consider ourselves to be very early days in terms of the rollout, in terms of the data that's going to be generated, and we're starting to see a significant number of messages being generated, and you're going to start seeing them sort of get to more than 10 messages a day per airport in some cases. Even then, we've got a lot of feedback from different airports where they, 1 message a day is very helpful in terms of assessing where they are. I would also make the point that what we're seeing here is the number of messages generated. Not all landings from an aircraft equipped with the software will generate a message. If the if there's no issue with the friction, if there's runway is performing well, then we're not going to see a message. This is generating messages where it's where friction is either good to medium or worse, and if it's good to medium or better, then we get a at least message. And then, so I think it's my final slide. This is again just we captured this last night, and the reason I like this this is Guwahati, and forgive me if I've butchered the pronunciation there, Guwahati Airport. And the reason we like this is that you can see all three of the operators that are equipping have landed there. This is yesterday. We're getting all three operators are generating a message even for one airport. So I quite like this. And this is just a screenshot from our web UI. As I said, the data is available in other ways. So thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it. Of course, if you have any questions, you can ask them down the Q&A session, or you've got my details there.
Yes, thank you very much, Charles. That was very, very good insights on onboard technology, also corresponding with the airport, sending data in order to enhance better landing for aircrafts. I have so I would like to open the interactive discussion. So if you have any questions on our workshop today, please raise your hand or type your question in the chat box here. Charles, I've got one question here, and that's from Mr. Sanjay. He's asking if there is any additional pilot training needed for this in order to develop a level of confidence on the system.
Okay, good question. I don't believe there is any dedicated pilot training. It's a very simple change for them, and they don't change what they're doing in terms of putting together the pilot report or anything like that. This is just giving them additional information that's objective and not relying on their potentially subjective sense of how the landing went. So I don't believe there's any training needed for the pilot. In terms of actually using the data or obtaining the data, there is a very short training session that we would give to airports or to airlines. But you know, it's sophisticated, but it's not complicated. It's quite easy to use from both the airline side and from the airport side.
Okay, I have a few other questions here. The data is stored by NAVBLUE and not by the respective airports. Do airports have to pay for getting the real-time data?
So that's a good question again. Yes, the airlines are able to access the data that they generate for free because we want to incentivize the airlines to equip. But yes, the business model is that the airports would pay to obtain this data, and it is more or less real time. We'd expect the data to be available within a minute after the landing. And we can either provide it through our web UI. You also have the opportunity to download historic data up to 2 years from the beginning of the contract, and then, as I mentioned before, while we have a web UI, which is a simple platform, does what it says, you know, very, very simply, that we also have an API so they can integrate it into other systems if they need to.
Okay, thanks. Another question is this only limited to Airbus airplanes or aircrafts, or are you also working with Boeing or other aircraft manufacturers to implement this technology?
This currently is only on the A320 family, so A319, 2021. It is also available on the A330, but because of a compatibility issue, it's not actually a huge percentage of that fleet. And in fact, it's the A320 has got, you know, more rotations, more landings, and that's what gets you the data. So the long haul fleet is maybe not so interesting. Where I'd really like to see it is on the A220, because obviously that's intended for short haul operations, and you get more landings by aircraft. I'm afraid I can't comment on other manufacturers.
Okay. And is this a more proactive tool or a predictive tool?
Oh, it's I wouldn't say it's predictive. No, this is reporting what the runway conditions are at that airport at that time. So if I go back, what you're seeing here, that top flight is the Go Air 758. That's showing that it's good to medium or better between 700 and 1750 or 1800 and 2200 meters. That's what it's showing, and it's got an accuracy of about 100 meters. But that's what was happening at that time. Now, of course, runway conditions change over time. So at the time, it says, at the moment, it says not enough data. But if this was real time, sorry, I'll go back, you would see a sort of an averaging of the previous landings to give you the latest runway condition, and giving a weighting to the more recent landings. However, you know, obviously what happened like 3 days ago isn't so relevant, so it's trying to, you know, we've got a data validity limit, which is the red dotted line there. So after a few hours, I don't know exactly the time, we put that line there, so the user is alerted to the fact that the data that they're seeing here, it isn't super real time, but you know, what you can see is if a landing comes in, then it will populate very, very quickly within a couple of minutes. You're on mute there, Russell.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Yuri, I have a question for you. Does your system needs to be recalibrated each year?
That's a very good question. Yes, every now and again, you of course recalibrate the system, but you can do that at a moment that you choose based on your flight schedule. And yeah, if there is a forecast to be rainfall, you can choose a moment to sort of recalibrate your system. Just yeah, that always is a good thing with these type of systems, but that just needs to be done like the question is posing, maybe once a year to make sure that your system is still fully accurate.
Okay, thanks, Yuri. Then another question for Charles. Is the onboard system connected with aircraft automation? Because the time window available for the pilot, if it is proactive, is the tool is really minuscule. Mr. Sanjay, maybe you could switch on your camera and your mic to express this question, because I personally am not getting it. Hello, Mr. Sanjay, you raised that question. Okay, moving on to the next one. Is the data included in the electronic flight bag, Charles?
Yes, it can be. It depends on the airline operations and how they manage it, but yes, it can be provided as in the EFB as an input for the landing calculation. But that then depends on the airline obtaining the information. As I said, they can obtain their own data free of charge as part of the BACF installation. But then, of course, the responsibility is still with the airline to make sure they're using the right data at the latest time. And I guess the only official source for that would be from the ATC. So yes, but it's not a clean yes. It's a yes with a caveat.
Okay. Mr. Hemant Kumar, you have raised your hand. Please switch on your camera and your mic. And
yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon. This is Captain Hemant from Indigo, Delhi. And my question is that, like we have the the as per the runway condition assessment matrix, and depending upon the accumulation of water, whether it is 1/3, 3 millimeters on the 1/3 of runway, or 6 mm, or maybe the up to 13 mm, as depending given in the runway condition assessment matrix. Whether it is first 1/3, second 1/3, or maybe the last 1/3, or it all depends, beginning of the runway or end of the runway. So what, I mean, can you please give us some guidelines on when to, in fact, this question is more to Oeri Alman, that what are the guidelines, if you can just give us when to stop the runway operations from the perspective of the pilot who is on board or who is holding for landing, or maybe from the perspective of the airport operator. Thank you.
It's a very good question. I'm not sure if I can answer that fully, but it's finally the airport's responsibility to indicate whether the runway is safe. So the responsibilities is really shifted a lot to the airport, giving the accurate reporting to the ATC that can then give it to the pilot. But so yeah, I won't specify exactly when it's safe, but I'm just saying with this new global reporting format of ICAO, that responsibility has really shifted to the airport.
All right, so they have to decide what value of the water accumulation, on what value they have to take the decision. All right.
Yeah, and maybe my colleagues from EASA can elaborate a bit on what conditions are deemed unsafe and how that has been recorded in the regulations. So that's all regulation based. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the question actually.
Okay, if I may respond to this, well, the idea is that runway operations should stop when you have a runway condition code which is 0. In fact, it's very difficult to have a runway condition code 0 with water only. Normally, this applies when you have excessive accumulation of snow or ice and some other combinations. But as far as I remember, the lowest you can go with wet conditions or flooded runways is, I think it's 2. And then based on the runway condition code you receive as a pilot, you need to perform the landing distance assessment at the time of arrival. And if your calculation says that, well, the available length is not adequate, then you don't land. That's the idea behind. But with water, it's very difficult to say that when you are closing down the runway. I can tell you for snow, but actually this is a concept. You provide all the information to the pilot, they have the matrix, and based on the data they receive from the ground, they decide how to operate. And there is also something, well, you are a pilot, you know better than me, but from discussions I had with many pilots is that normally all these assessments are done before the top of descent. So you have all the information and then from the ground, and then you do the calculations and you decide when what you are going to do. And another important thing is that, which is not in the presentation, but if you go to ICAO, also to EASA rules, you will find that, especially for aerodromes that they have more than one runway, it's important that if one runway is contaminated, then you need to provide information for all the runways as an aerodrome, because sometimes the most contaminated runway could be the most favorable for landing because of other reasons, for example, length, crosswind, many things. So the idea is to provide the full picture to the pilot, and then the pilot, based on the data they have from the manufacturers, they can do the calculations. So this is how the system works.
All right. Thank you, Vasilios. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Akash Bhatnagar from Indigo, you have raised your hand. Please.
Yeah, thanks, Atul. Thanks. So, Charles, I have a question. So now you can see there are more than 100 aircrafts which will be equipped in Indian skies reporting this. Have we run some kind of a campaign with the air traffic controllers and airport authorities to, help them to understand how, because, suddenly you will see every pilot will be reporting this to ATC. And we have started this campaign on our own. We are trying to reach out to our partners in airport authority and try to tell them how this thing is working. But is it somewhere in pipeline that NAVBLUE has taken ownership and going into airport authority and educating them on this campaign?
Good to see you, Akash. Absolutely, that's on the agenda. In fact, this session itself is part of our attempt to do that. I think, and I believe there are some representatives of AAI on this call. I really think you make a very good point, and I think it is only in our interests to do that and engage at that level. So yeah, we are connecting with some airports and some airport operators directly. But it's a little bit piecemeal. I would like to be able to, as you say, engage at a sort of a higher level to make sure that the right messages are being sent and the right understanding is at all the right levels. So I think that's a great point, and yes, that's what we want to do.
Thanks.
And one thing, Akash, this would be the homework for the cluster itself, for the cluster management to drive this, to bring NAVBLUE and all the stakeholders together in order to address these topics that you just mentioned. So this is our work, and we will do it on the business level and also on a policy level. And we have also started this campaign, and we are in touch with the authorities, our friends there. So we're gonna tell them, show them the reports, so that the monsoons are setting in. So I think that will be a great achievement if we can all achieve it together. Yes. Thanks for your question. I've noted it down, and this will be one of our action points. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I got a few more questions. One is for Yoeri. In snow condition, does your tool also indicate the preventive, reactive, predictive measures that airports can undertake on a real-time basis?
Very good question. No, this is based on rain gauges data. So no, this is not particularly for snowy conditions. That's why we're very much promoting this for this platform to India. And yeah, any countries and airports where they do not have snowy conditions, you can use this tool. And then I see another follow-up question. I think. Can it be linked to the Meteo servers and linked into the ACDM? Of course, yes. This data will very much feed into your ACDM, and predictive data from the Meteo will help you with this tool to generate your reports. So yes, it's definitely part of and should be integrated with your full ACDM.
Okay, and then there's another question. Are airports need to carry out safety assessments for GRF implementation based on local airfield layouts and climate conditions? That's a good question. Who wants to answer that?
Well, maybe the answer is yes. I mean, airports do have that responsibility now. Just to read the question properly, so definitely by November you would, as an airport, need to be ready for the global reporting format. How you do it is up to you as an airport. That deadline has been adopted also by DGCA, if I'm not mistaken. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thanks a lot, Yoeri. Anybody who has a question? We still have 15 minutes in our in our time. So please utilize this time to raise your questions. Otherwise, I would just ask a question to NAVBLUE. How can, I think you have already answered, but how can the airport get the data? I think you answered that before, but
yeah. Sorry, just unmuting. Yeah, it's we have a very simple web-based tool which has the data and also allows airports to download the last 2 years worth of data. Obviously, 2 years ago there weren't any airlines equipped in India, so 2 years ago there won't be any data really, I would imagine, for Indian airports, but maybe for the last 6 months, and maybe that's a potentially an input into the assessment that Yuri was just discussing as well. So it's, again, when NAVBLUE isn't trying to replace anything, it's very much additional data to include, and it can contribute to that sort of assessment. And then, as I mentioned, there's an API, it is just data, so we can push it into another system as it's generated.
Yeah, I think, Carlos, you want to add something there? Carlos, you're muted. Oh. Okay, no.
Not anymore. No, it wasn't related to that. It was another question.
Okay, so then I would like to have Mrs. Or Mr. Murali Varadarjan first, because the hand is raised. Please raise your question.
Hi, hi everyone. This
Hi.
question is for Jury. This tool which we were talking about, maybe I missed that part initially, is that how much time it's going to take to implement in the airport, like putting those sensors and calibrating it and implementing it in the system, because we're all short of the November deadline and we got huge airports to cover. So how much time does it take to implement?
Yeah, so good question. The critical part of it for our tool is it needs to be in the rainy season. Otherwise, you cannot calibrate it, right? So since India has a very distinct rainy season, and it's in some parts of India, it happens twice, thankfully, but in most parts of India, it only happens once. You're very restricted in the calibration part. So you have to have your rain gauges set up before that rainy season starts, and then you can do the calibration over a few weeks. So that's the critical part. So yes, this monsoon period is when it needs to happen. We actually spoke to Mumbai Airport and we're about to install the rain gauges at Mumbai last monsoon, but then COVID happened and the whole process was temporarily cancelled. But yeah, we hope that we can help many airports this monsoon to roll out some of this.
Maybe we can smartly use those fire cannons to kind of give you constant rain to calibrate it. The way to work it out. Anyway, thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Carlos. Now
can I ask one question from you?
Sorry.
Myself, Devansh Gupta, and I am from GYE LLP, and also the member of the EuroCAT WG109, in which already mostly standard is published, in which all the parameters pertaining to the GRF, and how could it should be implementing in India? How could be adoptable for India? Can you suggest me that how could India will adopted the standard in all protocol or in all airport? There are approx 100 airports in India. So how could India will adopted that standard in particular airport? So which device is installed in particular airport? So give the accuracy and the desired result, which is the ICAO compliance requirements, and what are the basic elements required for the GRF. So similar, there are some warm conditions issues are mostly formed in the Asian countries. So we are in last meeting of EuroCAT. We are also considered that in European countries they have some snowy conditions, but in India, in Asia Pacific countries, they have some warm conditions. and there are some hotter airports as well as some coldest airport. So they have some average of the different type of airports. So how could we categorize in India to adopted this standard in a better way? Can you suggest us?
I'll leave it to my colleagues, but a quick answer to your question is, of course, manually you can still do all the checks, and as long as you follow ICAO's global reporting format, you can comply. These automated tools and the automated information that Charles mentioned are just a more efficient way to go about it. But yes, of course, everybody can find compliance by also doing manual checking of runway conditions, as long as they then follow the global reporting format of ICAO.
But there should be a validation according to the standard that should be required as per the standard. Yeah, how could I validation of any kind of software? Maybe I install NAVBLUE system, other company system. There are so many companies in the race who you are installing the system in their different airport. So because ICAO will not giving any validation to any of the instrument, any of the technology. So it should be clearly mentioned by ICAO that these are the parameters which are you reporting if you are a busiest airport, you are mapping your airport, how much grading you are giving. So you making the RCAP accordingly. So how could I suggest which is the best one in which I get the all solutions in that one platform?
That you will need to evaluate based on the information given, what suits your particular case best. And it's based on many things, of course, maybe operational cost, safety considerations, the complexity of your airport, etc. Which solution you think is most appropriate to implement for you. Yeah,
maybe the question is on how to interface maybe the information with different systems. Is this your question that you had? Is it maybe interfacing that you're looking at?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it should not be interfacing case because different companies have their different technologies. So you have not interfacing, but you integrating some value addition in their product. So that could be valuable adding. But you have not merging 2-3 companies products, that could create a problem. That never give a desired result. But if you follow one company, 2 company, 3 company, so you definitely marking that which company equipment is installed by airports and airport are consisting with that similar company. So we are also in the race that we are talking with lots of company in different parameters. You are you are manufacturing some kind of reporting tool for all the airports. So still we are make our best practicing. We are creating our engineers team in India, in which we are involving 100 to 150 engineers in our GYE organization, in which we have sending that engineers to different locations of the airports in all India. And we have studied that, firstly, we have studied that how is the condition of that particular runway of that particular airport. So after that, we have synchronized what kind of technology is installed in that particular airport. So this is our main planning, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Any
sir.
Any
Thank you,
sir. Okay, we have 2 other questions. One is from Mr. Hemant Kumar. Mr. Kumar?
Yeah, hello everyone, Captain Hemant from Indigo. Just a short and quick one that now this deadline is coming of 4th of November. So what is the timeline for, because we have to train all the pilots and all and all the ATC controllers, timeline for the training, whether it is a level B training, level A training, 1 day, or it is how many hours? Any guidelines if we can get from your side? Thank you.
I think that would be a question for EASA.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Well, the level of the training is well, I'm not. We do not specify the level of the training and the duration of the training in our regulations. This is up to the airline how to conduct the training and when to conduct the training. Ideally, we wish to have the training before the effective implementation date. So for your region, it's gonna be before November 2021. Now it depends on your authority and how much they will push, and also on the operators. We know that the industry is in a very difficult situation because of the COVID-19, and a lot of, well, quite a number of flight crews have been, let's say, laid off, and you have to do the new training to come back to duties, but it's something that we cannot say. There are trainings available which you can follow. This is for the pilots. For the air traffic controllers, it's simpler, and because the idea is, and the objective is, that the controllers, they preserve the integrity of the information. So I'm saying something that I have a lot of air traffic controllers, which we are good friends, and they don't like it. But in this particular case, it's a relay station. So they need to know the phraseology, the correct phraseology, and how to transfer the information correctly.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's correct.
They don't have, well, last week I had a webinar with controllers, and they started questioning many things. And I told them, look, it's not your job. Your job is just to transfer the information. We don't want anything else from your side. It's not your business, which is quite, for controllers, it's quite difficult to understand, but this is the case. So for the controllers, it's easier. The other thing is which I don't know if they have mentioned, they have to change the AIS system. Well, in your region, you don't have, I don't have too much experience from India about if you have snow conditions at some airports, but at least in Europe, they have to change the SNOTAM format, which is an issue because they need to change software and many other interfaces. But I guess that in your region, it's not really required.
You're right.
So this is the situation.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Saxena, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you again. Just now it was, there was a discussion on the subject that ATC will be relaying the information which is given, the RCR which is given by Aerodrome. Now, there is one critical issue. I don't know how other countries are, what is being done on this. As per ICAO mandate and various documents, the Aerodrome, when they release an RCR, it is from lower denominator, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now, supposingly Mumbai 0927, it will be first 1/3 will be 09 side. But if air operational runway is 27, how it is going to be transmitted? Is it going to be done in the same way, or ATC will convert it, or pilot has to interpret it other way around? That's what is my question.
Okay, so well, the RCR, which is generated by the aerodrome, always refer to the lower designation number. But when this information is transferred to the flight crews by air traffic control or through ATIS, you always refer to the landing or takeoff runway. So in your case, for example, if you have a runway 927, the aerodrome will start by runway 09. But if you have runway 27 in operation, the controllers, they have to reverse the order, which is something, it's not new. this is what is happening or the last 40, 50 years when we're reporting runway surface conditions, with the current way. So nothing new, but you need to know that you as an airport, if you are an airport operator, you start with the lower designation number, and then the controllers, they always give the landing runway or the takeoff runway. This is the method. And if you go to ICAO documentation, and especially in PAM's aerodrome, this is described very, very well there.
Yeah, that is what 44, but 4444, as per 4444, they'll be giving as per the operational runway. And that is what I believe in the training for ATC control to be situational awareness and highlighted that because in the new format, they have to convert it and give it, because especially first 1/3 and second 1/3, there may be a different, the whole thing will get, the interpretation should not get, the right interpretation should go. Another issue is when we are giving 1/3, it is considering the entire runway length. It doesn't cater for the threshold shifted. Now, how do we look at that point? Because especially in supposingly in Delhi, you have a huge runway threshold shifting. So first 1/3 aircraft may not use only. So.
Okay, well, you actually you refer to the whole length of the runway. You do not consider the thresholds because the runway is used also for takeoff. So although you have a displaced threshold, which normally is not used during landing, but if you change direction and then this information, this part of the threshold will be used for the takeoff as the last part, or even for the first part of the takeoff. So the pilots, they need to have this information, and especially for takeoff. If you have a contaminated runway, especially at the beginning of the runway, you know the acceleration of the aircraft is slow. So they need to know this information. So you don't consider displaced thresholds. And I advise you to check PAN's aerodrome, where they have some very nice diagrams there and addressing different cases with displaced thresholds, with stopways, with everything there. I hope that this answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all. We have come now to the end of our session today. We are continuing tomorrow. But before we log off, my communication team was asking you to switch on all your cameras so that we can take a final picture of this workshop today, and so that we can post it on social media. And yeah, thank you very much. Very good. Yeah, come all together. You're right. Very good.
Thank you.
Nancy, Nidhi, you tell me when you're ready.
So is that it? Or are more people going to turn on their cameras?
I don't know. I think that's it.
That's it? Okay. I think Miss Savitra Saxena, I think if you could just, and Devansh Gupta, if the two of you could just move back from your camera, because yeah, it's too zoomed in right now. No, it still isn't very clear. If you could just move back a little so that we can at least. Yeah, I think that's slightly better. All right, we'll just take a few shots here now. Please bear with us for a few seconds. So when I just ask that we're done with, when I just say that we're done with it, is when you can turn off your cameras. So just give me a few seconds, please. Nancy, please take the screenshots as well. Okay, she's already taken, and I'm going to take one. Yes. we're done with it.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for joining.
Thank you, Atul.
We'll,
One question
Thank
quickly.
you.
If,
yes, please go ahead.
is it possible to share these presentations of the speakers?
Yes, they're nodding, so yes. But
Thank you.
so we as a cluster, we will take forward, or even if it comes to collaborations with Indian stakeholders such as Indigo and AI just mentioned, we'll definitely take that forward as a cluster. Our cluster members are also eager to get in touch with the industry and also with policymakers. So I've noted down some tasks for us to move forward. And this is the reason why we are having this. We started off on a very generic way. We are narrowing down the topics so that we can bring the topics and the right stakeholders together. So thank you very much for joining today. I hope I'll see you tomorrow as well in our performance-based navigation workshop, which will be also very interesting. And yeah, wish you a very nice afternoon, very nice day, and yeah, see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice interaction section.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.